Hello and welcome to my belated August and September reading wrap-up. I've had a little bit of a break from reading. There's been stuff going on in my personal life which, I'm going to be honest, has not been great, and it's affected me in all ways of my normal life, including my reading. My reading has really declined, so I've put my September in with my August, but you'll see that I haven't read a lot. I also, although we're in October, I haven't read a lot in October either. But yeah, I'm going to crack on with the books that I have read. So these are all the books that haven't featured in their kind of own little review or featured in like history book reviews, etc. These are all the rest of the books. So I will leave links for them in the description bar below, and let's get straight into it. So starting off, I read Frost at Christmas by R.D. Wingfield. I picked this up when I went on holiday this year to Wales and we went to Hay on Wye. I picked this book up. This is the first book in the Frost series, and it's about this 8-year-old girl called Tracy who goes missing. She's meant to come out of her Sunday school and go home. Her mother is what should we call her? Let's call her a lady of the night. Let's call her that. Her client is late by an hour, and so she's late to pick up her daughter Tracy. So she kind of looks out the window and wants to see Tracy walking home because she usually can, and she can't see her. Goes to try and find her, can't find her, ends up calling the police. Inspector Allen takes on the case of the missing girl, but as things develop, Inspector Frost ends up taking over the investigation. Frost is lazy, untidy, he's lucky in a lot of things, he can be quite rude and quite coarse, but he does get the job done. I would say that the David Joseph Frost is more PG than this Frost. I adored this book. I whizzed through it really quickly. All I could do was read this book. This was when I was reading a lot because this is my August. And I was just reading it all the time. But I had a couple of problems with it, which took it from a 5-star and I had to take it down. I took it down to a 4, but I'm still not sure about it. So the way that they talk about this 12-year-old girl in this sexual way, it's a priest that talks about her predominantly, it's disgusting. You know, they talk about her in a sexual manner, which I think is wrong. Then there's also the degrading way in which they talk about Tracy's mum, who, as I said, is a lady of the night, and I thought because of her profession that might be why they talk about her in that way, you know, such a derogatory fashion because she's a woman. But then they also talk about a female police officer in the same manner, and I was just, yeah, it just made me feel a bit uncomfortable reading those parts. You know, I'm a woman, and even if I wasn't a woman, I don't think you should talk about women in that way. I know this book was written in the 80s, but was that acceptable in the 80s? I don't know. So it should have been a 5-star, but I did bring it down to a 4. I'm still a bit unsure. I will definitely carry on with this series because I loved the book, but I don't know, it just, yeah, I don't know. Then I read Giant Days Volume 10, my favourite comic book series about 3 girls in their time at university. I really enjoyed this one because Daisy finally comes right to the forefront of this little group of girls. So we have in this the summer between year 2 and year 3 and the beginning of year 3, and it's again about relationships and work and friendships and just the reality of university life going into 3rd year, which is panic. I remember my 3rd year, just a lot of stress, but this is brilliant as ever. And as I said, Daisy really comes to the forefront with her own life for once, which is something that hasn't really happened before. Usually it's Daisy and Susan at the front, and usually Esther and Susan at the front, sorry, and then Daisy's storylines are behind, but she really takes control of this volume and I love it. Now there's 4 individual comics in this volume, and for some reason 2 and 3 they changed the artwork style slightly, which I wasn't too keen on, but then they go back to the other one for 4, so I'm glad they go back and revert back to the original art style, but it's just, I don't know, a bit strange. It's still 5 out of 5 stars, still brilliant. I still absolutely adore this series. It's still my favourite. It is coming to an end though, which I'm sad about, but I'm going to enjoy the volumes while they last. So there was that one. Then I read Winnie's Crazy Capers by Valerie and Korky. I've read a few of these now. I read some of them when I was a child, and I now read them predominantly to look at the illustration and the colours. I make my own cards, and I'm trying to get better with like colouring and shading and stuff, and I think the illustrator of this does an amazing job, and they're just lovely. And they're great little books to read to a little one if you've got anyone of that sort of age, or big kids can read it too. I then read Search and Find Pride and Prejudice. So this is another lovely little book where what you have to do is there is settings from different places in the book. So for this one is Netherfield Hall or Netherfield Park, and then you've got to find certain characters and certain items in the picture. I thought 10 minutes easy. It took me a good half hour to get that done. I would say if you, like me, you adore Pride and Prejudice, currently rereading it for the billionth time, then you will really like this and will want to add this to your Jane Austen shelf. If you're not, I probably wouldn't bother, but I do really like it. I gave that 4 stars because I did really enjoy it. I then read A Damsel in Distress by P.G. Wodehouse. This is about a 20-year-old woman called Maud who last summer when she was on holiday met this man who her family deemed unsuitable. He is someone who doesn't have a title, a place in society, money, all those things that are important to this family. So she was taken away from him. But she has found him. He is now in London and she's going to go meet him. While she's in London, before she gets to him, her brother spots her and she panics and she gets into a taxi of a stranger's like, hide me. And he does. He hides her, gets into a little bit of a tiff with her brother, knocks off his silk hat. It's hilarious. His brother ends up getting into a bit of a kerfuffle with the police and ends up getting arrested. It's brilliant. The stranger in the taxi ends up kind of falling in love with her and ends up trying to like follow her and get her to fall in love with him, even though she's in love with this other bloke. It's all very funny. I was a little bit worried going into this because I've never read one of his standalones before. I've only read the Jeeves and Wooster series, which I've finished and I adore so much. I've done a whole video on that. I'll leave it for you up here somewhere. And also I've read The Start of Landings. I've read the first one in that series and really enjoy them. And I really enjoy P.G. Wodehouse's humour, and I was hoping that it was going to be the same in his standalones, and it is. They're wonderful. So if you've never read a standalone, I would recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe 4.5 actually. It's really good. Then I'm getting tired. Then I read The Tree of Death, which is a Rosemary and Thyme mystery by Brian Eastman. This was the last one that I had to read because there's 3 of them in the series. Let me know if you would like a roundup of the 3 books in the series, and I would do that for you. So we are in a little village, aren't we always? And there is a farm owned by Marie Sutton, possibly up for sale. She hasn't decided, but there's 2 possible buyers. And while they're at this little village hall, talking about the possible sale of the farm, her brother comes back, Malcolm, and he's like, no, it's not happening. He puts a right spanner in the works, but then he ends up dead. And of course, Rosemary and Thyme investigate, and it is really, really good. It's more detailed than the TV series, which I really like. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed them. I really enjoy the books. I think they're really good. I adore the series. Then I fancied a graphic novel, so I picked up Rick and Morty Tiny Rick. I picked this up at a charity shop for like 50p. It was an absolute bargain. I have watched the series. I'm not like a huge fan in the sense that I've watched them on repeat again and again. I've done that with The Simpsons, and I still do that with The Simpsons, but I don't do it with Rick and Morty. But when I saw it in a charity shop for so cheap, I thought I'd give it a go, and I thought it was okay. I'm going to be honest, I thought it was just okay, to be honest. It was like an episode. I think if you are one of those like die-hard fans of it, then you'll really enjoy them. But I think if you're like me and you just watch them every now and then, or you've just like watched one of each of the episodes, that's what I've done, then I would probably give the comics a miss. Then I fancied reading one of my beloved Patricia Wentworths, so I picked up The Fingerprint. This is about a young girl called Georgina and her uncle. She lives in her uncle's house, which is lovely and big, and she ends up having a bit of an argument with her uncle over one thing and another, and the next time she sees him, he is dead in his study, and there's a gun there, and what she does, she goes and picks it up so her fingerprints are on it, and she instantly becomes a suspect. But did she do it? Miss Silver goes in to investigate. This was so good. The last couple of Patricia Wentworths that I've read have been a bit hit and miss, 2 kind of stars. This, 4 stars, maybe 4.5. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really good, and yeah, it was nice to see a really good, strong Patricia Wentworth again, so I really recommended this one. Then, when I went to a National Trust, I saw this and I couldn't resist. This is Homes Through History, Step Inside. I did put this on my Instagram, so you might have seen it already. But it is this little book that goes through different ages of history, and you can open it up and like the windows come out and stuff and see inside the house. It's really sweet, but it also talks about like fashion of that era as well, and furniture and stuff like that. It's lovely. Yeah, just a lovely little book that I'm going to put on display because I think it's very pretty. Okay, so that was all the books that I read in August, when I was still reading my normal amount before something happened, and then September came and I managed to finish 3 books, which is a huge difference, because I read, how many did I read in August? I've got my notes down here. I read 13 in August and I read 3 in September, so great. One of which was Queen Lucia, which I'm doing a separate review of, so you can look forward to seeing that. But the other 2 that I read was The Worst Witch Saves the Day by Jill Murphy. This was, you know, it's one of the worst witch books in the series. So in this one we have giant long hair that you can see here. We have a tabby cat on the roof. We have lots of different little plots that go on. I liked this. I didn't like it as much as the other 2 that I've read. So I might kind of stop the series now. But yeah, I liked it, and if you've got any people in your life, any little people that kind of want to get into Harry Potter but they're still a bit too young, then I would recommend The Worst Witch, because it's similar sort of thing. It's all magic, isn't it? And then lastly, the last book that I read in September was this. This is The Essential Guide to Warwick Castle. So I went to Warwick Castle for the day with my boyfriend in September, and we had a lovely time. So we went to see the Trebuchet show, although that thing was broken. They're getting a new lever thingy. We went to see the falconry and the archery, which was really good. They had these free history tours on in the castle, and we went to one which was of the state rooms, and it was wonderful to hear about the history of the castle, because you go inside the castle and it's, you know, ruins and castle walls and stuff like that, and then it's like a stately home inside castle walls. It's funny. And learning about the history of the house was really interesting, and you know, Tudor's my favourite period in history, how it actually went to a bit of ruin and stuff like that. But then we also learn about Daisy, who I'm currently reading about, and she held the most like lavish parties there. Her historical heroine was Marie Antoinette, and she owns her clock, which is there at Warwick Castle. There's Queen Anne's deathbed there at the castle as well. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to go and visit. I went when I was a child at school. It's kind of like this rite of passage. If you live kind of like in the Midlands where we do, you go to Warwick Castle. So I think I went like twice to school. I went as a child with my family as well, but I haven't been for a good, you know, 15, 18 years, something like that. So it was nice to visit it again, and it was lovely to finish off the day by buying the guidebook, and it was lovely. This is how I think guidebooks should be, really fun and interesting, and they do this little did you know sort of things with little extra facts about the place as well, and it's really good, really interesting to learn about. So that is it. That is all the books that I've read in August and September. I'm hoping I can try to get back to a bit of normality in regards to my reading. I'm trying to read a bit more and try to get to like a normal amount of books for me, which is probably about, I don't know, average of 10, 12 a month, something like that. So yeah, let's hope I can get back to that, because I really want to get to 100 by November, end of November, so I can just spend December rereading my old favourites. Anyway, that's it for this video. Chat to me in the comments all things bookish, and I shall see you soon for the next video. Bye for now.